Have you checked the children? You're a little mad sometimes.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes. That is better.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Howdy folks, welcome back to the Horror Show. Robert Duell.
And Jaime and Fuego here for a newer patron, Mr. John Fairley's request for none other than the third, at least in the original Romero Dead trilogy. We are talking about Day of the Dead.
Yes.
Yeah, the 1985 installment being preceded by Dawn of the Dead and the OG Night of the Living Dead. This is, I would probably contend, the most accomplished visually, just based on the fact that Savini, a longtime collaborator of Romero's, had the opportunity to craft the best gore effects, I think, in the original trilogy and stuff. And so, upon a revisit, despite the fact that I think maybe the original film, Night, was more groundbreaking, especially with its protagonist. Dawn maybe had the most to say from like a social standpoint about consumerism and all that other stuff, but I think Day is my favorite of this trilogy at this particular point. I feel like there's a lot of goofiness in Dawn of the Dead, especially at the end with the biker game and all that, but
Honestly, you can kind of even say that with Day of the Dead.
A little
Day
bit.
of the Dead too, especially with some of our army characters and things like that.
They're over the top for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that I don't know. I think this one might have inched ahead of Dawn as my favorite upon this most recent rewatch. I hadn't seen this in a number of years, and everybody remembers Bub, and just the significance of a zombie maybe regaining any essence of coherence and intelligence and stuff. But some great gore, and there is a notably nasty military dude who is like getting the bunker fever and going nuts down in there, and he's leading his lackeys around, and there's also a strong female presence who is opposing him down there in this bunker in Florida. And so while it's not a personal favorite zombie movie of mine as far as like all time, I don't know. I always go back to Snyder and James Gunn's remake, Dawn of the Dead. I love that movie, man. I really do.
That one took
it's frenetic.
A few watches to start growing on me.
Personal taste. Subjective.
I did not like it the first couple times I watched it. I thought it was a garbage remake. Because my biggest thing is like the fast running zombies. It's like, no.
Which Romero hated. He told me that personally.
They're dead.
Yeah.
Like, shit's going to start seizing up. Things are start coming apart. Like, there's no way you're running 40 miles an hour keeping up with a bus. Hell out of here.
And that's where with the whole, rage virus stuff that we also saw in stuff like 28 Days Later.
See, that was
some of those later takes of this
that was more
infection,
believable,
so to speak.
Because technically they weren't dead. They were just, it was an infection.
Yeah, exactly. But Day of the Dead, 85 specifically for John. Man, this is my favorite, I think, now of the trilogy, just inching past Dawn for the first three at least.
I would definitely agree with that. Just on going back to even what you were saying earlier, that developing the or fine tuning the craft more. You can definitely see it with this one, especially with Nicotero on board and everything for the effects on this movie. It was definitely the more superior of his dead films. Even obviously, like, we can pretty much all agree, even his later ones, so like Land of the Dead, Diary of the Dead, weren't all that
Survival.
good. Survival of the Dead, honestly, I think was his worst.
That's what a lot of people contend, actually.
I have a guilty pleasure spot in my heart for Land of the Dead. Is it a great movie? No. But it's got some merits with it,
Dennis Hopper. He's
fun. Exactly. You got Dennis Hopper, Ozzy Argento. She's hot.
That's right. Dario's daughter's in that one. I forgot about that. Story tackle.
Yeah. So, do you want to hit the story? You want me to hit the story?
Either way, man. I mean, I can certainly do it. So
it's pretty cut and I was say it's pretty cut and dry. It's basically we just a couple survivors trying to survive in a military silo, trying to last out the zombie apocalypse and trying to survive each other. Battles between, in a sense, the scientists and the military factions between each other.
There's a division in that regard. As they're trying to see if they can. I mean, the ultimate hope would be if they could cure what's going on, but there's so many that are so far gone. They're just like, okay, This is probably not possible, but could we at least see some regeneration of brain functionality, which is where Bub comes in, and, you know, just like listening to the music and just remembering some of those things that would probably be more muscle memory than anything. I mean, there's as like a musician myself, there's definitely been certain times where I'm like, oh man, I haven't played that song in a while. I remember how well it's sitting there in my brain, and it is more so an instinctual muscle memory sort of thing as opposed to actually rationalizing.
But with a touch of visual recognition and everything,
it definitely helps. Yeah,
like,
yeah.
And
in Bub's case,
Bub's case, yeah. And obviously, once Romero did that with the character of Bub,
we get it in Land.
We get it in Land. Well, not even just the Romero movies. We've seen it in multiple other zombie type movies where it's like, oh, they're starting to regain some of their humanity. Blah blah. It's either they're dead or they're not. Like,
yeah, and I'm thinking specifically of the third Return of the Living Dead, the one that was all kind of Romeo and Juliet, where
that was
Spike Girl was like remembering, and
so that was the one with the Tar Man, wasn't it?
That was the series with the Tar Man in the very first one, and the second Return of the Living Dead was relatively similar in that regard as far as campiness and whatever. But the third one, which was the one that I think Brian Usna did, if I remember correctly, it's more so this girl who is using the spikes of the needles and stuff of pain because she's like this punk rock kind of girl.
Yeah, I remember her. Yeah, because they get in the motorcycle accident and like the boyfriend revives her and shit like that.
Yeah, and so she's like trying to fight off the zombiedom and the hunger by the impaling of herself. So that's like another one of those instances where like there's a remembered essence of humanity that obviously came after this particular film, and I think Bub was one of, if not the first time where those sort of like just faint glimmers of recollection.
Yeah, and
really
that's why that's definitely why he's became a zombie icon. Like out of all the zombies, like Bub is the most recognizable icon and for zombies in horror.
Oh, we met him, the actor, at Mad Monster a few years ago, and he was a delight. Cecil interviewed him here on the channel, actually, so that's something you guys can
go check that out.
Yeah, damn Reese. But yeah, I mean, we've touched a lot of bases on the story, and just the fact that there is the stir craziness of the bunker aspect, the military contingent going nuts, just the combative nature of all of that, and then just realizing that there is a potential inevitability of either an invasion going down or run out of supplies and have to get out of there at some particular point. And yeah, it's pretty cut and dry as far as some of the conflict that we've seen before, and just the argumentative nature of these people, whether even back to the original Night of the Living Dead, the people in the house were fighting a little bit about how to proceed, and you get kind of similar vibes here as well, just with more official people.
Yeah, and that's like one thing I can definitely appreciate, like with how Romero wrote his movies, is like the simplicity of the setup, but at the same time, the complexity of all the little stories that he's trying to tell with the characters and the setup of. Basically, again, go with like Night of the Living Dead, the Day of the Dead, Dawn of the Dead, things like that.
Yeah,
they all had their social commentaries in it.
Yeah,
but the writing was simple enough to where you could thoroughly enjoy the rest of the movie without being bludgeoned with those excess commentaries.
Yeah, there's something to subtlety, and that's a great point, man. And the fact that his stuff is accessible to the general audience that doesn't want to delve very deep or dive or whatever, but yet there's also complexity to the allegory which we have, and just things that it is saying within the subtext below the surface without just being so hit you over the head with it. And I mean, this one probably being about
this is more
coming
like,
out in 1985. This was more so. I would.
This is like Cold War era.
Yeah,
so this was more of like isolation, but also society's collapse. That's what a lot of
the fear of it happening.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're alone, because there was even at one point.
There's the global clock on like what, couple minutes to midnight, hence the Maiden song, things like that.
Yeah. But even when they go out to the town and everything, they're trying to find the survivors and whatnot. It's just nothing but dead. Yeah. And they have said it's a dead city.
Yep.
Like there's nothing out here. Oh, they even one thing I definitely will have to laugh about this is they threw in a zombie alligator If you remember that in the beginning, there was
Vaguely.
There was an alligator sitting basically on the steps of this shop.
And if I remember, it was a real alligator.
It was a real
too,
alligator,
'cause
but
it's
they
moving and everything.
yeah, but they put makeup on him, like
To make
he's,
it
like
look like
he
it
had
was-
chunks and everything taken out. Like it was just one of those little kind of funny things. Like didn't really serve a purpose. It was just aesthetics.
Yeah.
But acting real quick. Nobody on this movie really felt short. Romero knew how to direct his people, even if they weren't big household names. He knew how to direct them enough with the talent that they had, and it worked.
Yeah.
Even again, like our lower characters on some of our army men, things like that.
Woo! Getting all hopped up and
That
excited.
that guy, I still feel is the most unnecessary character.
The second in command of sorts to our lead guy.
Yeah.
Kinda.
Well, no, not him. Not the bigger dude, but the smaller little scrappy guy.
Because I was referring to like the more like I don't know.
Not the big buff dude and everything.
Buff dude. He
Yeah.
was carrying around like the assault most of the time. And
Yeah,
had the
no, it
sunglasses
was
on, not that guy.
the laughing dude.
Okay.
His little buddy and everything.
Oh yeah, the other little crony guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
They're
was
stereotypical enough.
okay, but that wasn't, again, like I said, it's a nice thing about Romero and his movies. Like, even if they're not big name stars or anything, he still knows how to direct them well enough to where they can shine and stick out, and they're not put in the backdrop.
Yeah, our lead scientist guy, the dude who was actually behind the research, the older guy who
He was great.
Yeah, he's a little mad scientist to a degree, but he was entertaining in my estimation. And then his I guess contingent on the other side is our main military villain who is kind of trying to take control of everything. It was never really a military operation, so to speak, and yet he's trying to take control. But really for me, I feel like of the original three Walking Dead films, the original three, we know Walking Dead derived so much inspiration from Day of the Dead and Dawn and so on. Kirkman's gone on record many times to say it, but Night, Dawn, and Day all have a lead blondie, and I feel like really poorly done with Barbara in the first one as far as her being just borderline catatonic and not strong at all. Our pregnant woman in the second film was a little bit of an improvement, decent amount and stuff like that, but I feel like this was our most strong and assured, confident leading lady.
Strong woman.
Yeah, strong woman! In comparison with, the other two that preceded her. So this is where I feel like Romero wrote the woman the best, because it was something that I had some issue with in the previous two movies, is where I just didn't feel like he knew how to write women very well. Very complex, interesting dudes, for the most part, but and they do dominate all of these films for the most part. It's they're relatively male centric in that regard, but this is where I feel like he wrote the most compelling lady, at least personally. And she brought it with performance.
I would definitely agree. Let's see, music real quick.
Yeah.
Honestly, the music personally was pretty standard for the original three Romero zombie films, especially between Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead.
Yeah,
those two,
Dawn and Day have the most similarity.
They, especially with their soundtracks and everything and the scores. I'm
trying to remember if John Harrison did both of these or if he just did, because I know he was on the '78 Dawn film, and that was a really synthy, almost to the point of being a little bit goofy. This one, I felt it just kind of scaled it back a little bit, and it was a little bit more of the Goblin kind of ominous synth sort of thing.
This was more like what John Carpenter did with The Thing.
Yes, very
that kind
much
of
more
the
that
dark,
sort of
foreboding synth music of the '80s,
building and eerie. Yeah, for sure. Sound design too. I mean, when we do finally get some zombie action and chowing down, and this will obviously tie into the effects here at the very end. The most gruesome kills, both from a sonic standpoint and from a visual standpoint. I mean, like, just the pulling apart peeps. I mean, some of the nastiest.
Especially when he hooks the dude's head like a bowling ball and just starts pulling it back. Like you have, that's the one nice little thing is like like they did with the sound design. So when he's screaming, as his head and everything is getting pulled back, the
Esophagus?
yes, I can't even speak right now, is being stretched.
Hey, I'm talking about The Walking Dead, for God's sake, like a doofer. But
but like, so basically, like, as he's screaming, like, and he's getting, basically his head's getting ripped off, it screeches and whatnot. And that was one of those nice little sound details that most people don't think of, and it sticks out.
Indeed,
it definitely sticks out. Your sound design is, in a sense, a make it or break it for your visuals.
Yeah, and just back with the visuals too, I feel like the zombies look the most decayed thus far in the series. I mean, this came out after Return of the Living Dead, at least the first one, maybe the second one as well.
Okay.
And maybe there were some cues taken from the grisly nature that we saw in that, and yet not quite as campy, over the top. I felt like just the actual degrading of the tissue and the makeup and everything just looked significantly refined and improved, almost like they'd been dead longer, and just the essence of decay in that regard. I mean, it just came out more so compared to a fresh corpse.
Exactly, so. And that's what I was saying, like, earlier too. It's basically they was now able to refine his craft. Especially going back to like Dawn of the Dead, they were very blue and purple kind of thing. Even with the setting, it's like everyone's been dead for how many months or whatever like that. There should have already been a significant amount of decay.
Yeah, and there's a lot of arguments about the timeline of these films. And I mean, we know Night is presumably the first one, and yet there's some people who think Day and Dawn are concurrent, as opposed to, they were released 7 years, apart from each other. So I don't know. I've seen so much Reddit stuff and open for discussion that, Land takes place, at this particular point, and, survival and diary are their own things that don't even play in. And then there's still that new book, The Living Dead, that I have yet to read. I used an Audible credit on it, and I still haven't gotten around to it.
It was all right. That's actually
George only co-wrote it.
Yeah, he only co-wrote it and everything because I think he actually passed away before he was able to officially finish it. And personally, it's apparent that it's not just George's work,
not his voice.
Exactly. It's like, granted, it has a lot of his like political tones and things like that, but it got to the point where you definitely felt like they wanted to add more political shit than what needed to be.
No, especially with the current climate of the country and the world and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that was one of my biggest things that pulled me out of that story the most. Out of the Living Dead stories that recently came out, there's an anthology called Nights of the Living Dead, and those stories basically take place within the first 24 hours, and then within like the first month or whatever.
So it's anthology, obviously.
Yeah, but it's all set within that same time frame of the movies and all the same breakouts. But that was a solid anthology, and again, they were pretty true to the original style that Romero developed with his zombies.
Okay, so those you felt were a little bit truer to the source material? Okay.
Most definitely.
Interesting. Well, hell, guys, obviously a big thanks to John once again for giving us this recommendation, man. And would you be down, any of our patrons or a viewer who is checking this out, would you like us to review the other installments in this franchise, maybe even some of the return stuff or some of those aforementioned books and spin-offs and things like that? There's definitely a lot that connects to this series, but that's our thoughts on 1985's Day of the Dead. Tail Yizzle.
Oh yeah, guys. So, but yeah, if you guys want to become a patron, links down in the description below.
Bing.
Hit that subscribe button. Yeah,
subscribing.
Yeah, hit that bell so you get all the notifications for all of our new videos and everything like that. Other than that, from the Horror Show, I've been Robert Duell.
And gracias have been Jaime and Fuego.
And remember, stay scared.
Day of the Dead, zombie thing.
And then where?
Okay, that's more cerebral palsy, but alright.